Okay, thanks. Let's go. Sorry. Hey everyone, welcome to the Rootstock Community Call for December in the end of this year, 2022. We'd like to introduce you to Jose, Marcos and Adrian, and myself, Brendan, and all of us will be presenting a little bit in the call today. But before we start, I just wanted to quickly highlight something. You'll have noticed that in the previous community call, we had this logo, right, with RSK written on it, and now we have this new one, which is orange. And that's basically because we have changed from RSK branding to Rootstock branding. It happened just last month during the Rootstock Summit. So feel free to watch that video or the videos of the replays of that summit for more detail. For some historical context, RSK was originally called Rootstock, then it was renamed to RSK, and now we're back to Rootstock, but this time with a new logo. So just a heads up that you will still find a lot of references to RSK instead of Rootstock because things in code take time to rename due to refactoring and etc. So just know that both refer to the same thing for now. This will be the last presentation where you see of the community calls where you see the RSK logo. For now, we'll be using the new orange logo for Rootstock. All right. And one thing I'll mention is that the focus of these community calls is on the RSK improvement proposals or Rootstock improvement proposals called RSKIPs. They are available on GitHub at this URL, and you can scan the QR code to get there. So go check them out. So today we'll be talking about 3 particular RSKIPs, for example. And in all future community calls, we'll also be centered mostly around RSKIPs. All right, and here's the agenda for today. So we'll start with me with the introduction, which you've just seen, and then we'll have Jose present a summary of the peg-out incident, and then subsequently I will talk about the umbrella RSKIP for the network upgrade patch for HOP 4.0.1, and then we'll have Marcos talk about 2 RSKIPs, which are both part of this same umbrella RSKIP for 353 and 357. And finally, we'll wrap up with Adrian with the next steps. And that's the agenda for today. So let's begin. Actually, before we begin, let's just make this a little bit more interactive. So in this video stream, you feel free to comment in YouTube, wherever it is the live stream that you're watching. Or you can also join our community Slack. So you can go to rsk.co/Slack, and that will get you an invite link to something that looks like what we have in the top right corner. And feel free to join the research and innovation channel and drop your comments there or questions there. There is also a forum for those who prefer a bit more asynchronous communication. So that's research.rsk.dev, and you can scan the QR code at the bottom, and that will look something like what you see in the bottom right corner. So this is generally where we propose and discuss RSKIPs. So feel free to do that as well. All right, and let's just mention what the purpose of these community calls are. It's essentially all about you. So thank you for tuning in, and thank you for your feedback and your contributions so far. And we're always welcome to more. We'll talk about any feedback you have. We'll also focus on the consensus protocol for Rootstock. There's also a formal process called RSKIPs for proposing improvements. And these community calls will happen periodically and will almost certainly happen every time there's a network upgrade, such as the one that we are doing today. All right, with that, let's move over to Jose. Would you like to talk about peg-out status?
Thank you, Brendan. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So, as Brendan mentioned, I will be sharing with you what's the status of the peg-out issues. Let me start by telling you that we are fully committed to solve this issue and resume the service as soon as possible. So what is the status at the moment? The pegouts are not being processed. And what this means? If any user sends RPTC to the bridge as they would normally do to request a pegout, that request will be registered and accepted. But the Bitcoin transaction will not be broadcasted to Bitcoin. As soon as the service is resumed, those requests will be processed and the funds will be sent to the user corresponding Bitcoin address, as usual, which means your funds are safe. And why is it that the payouts are not working? Since HOP, the latest network upgrade, we have changed the POPEG Bitcoin script. This Bitcoin script is used by Bitcoin to validate the signatures of each of the peg notaries in order to process any payout transaction. The new script added security measures to ensure that in the fatal scenario that the POPEG fails, a secondary multisig will be able to spend those funds a year after they were generated. Sadly, the validation process for this new script format was not done perfectly. The result of this is that the Bitcoin Core nodes on mainnet are rejecting the payout transactions as non-standard. And what does it mean? There are two big sets of verifications for any Bitcoin transaction. First of all, it is checked that the Bitcoin transaction is valid, and then if it is standard. The script we use is valid. We verified this many times on testnet. What we did not verify was that it was standard. Bitcoin Core relaxes the standard rules for testnet, thus our tests done on that network never exercise the standard rules for our script. Going a bit deeper into this issue, this boils down to a Bitcoin instruction, an opcode, called opcheck multisig. This is used to verify the signatures of many signatories in a given transaction, which, according to Bitcoin Core standard rules, should be preceded by the number of signatories. In our script, the format is different. Marcos will explain this format alongside the proposed solution later on. So how do we propose to solve this issue? First of all, we need to make a new consensus change for Rootstock. We need to change again the script format to a different one that will be considered standard. This time we have made sure that the new format is valid and standard for Bitcoin Core nodes. In order to do this, what we have done is to replicate the new format using different set of signatories and perform transactions on mainnet verifying that they were accepted. We will have to migrate the funds from the old POPEG script to the new one. But before doing so, we are working alongside mining pools to help out with mining the non-standard transactions. As I mentioned before, we are fully committed to this community and platform. We have an incident report, which we have been updating with the progress we have made. You can see it down there in the link. Feel free to read more details about this issue in there. So that will be it from me as a summary of the current issue. I think we can move on now. And if anyone has any question, we can answer them by the end after we have all the details on the technical solution. So that will be it for me. Thank you all.
All right, and if we have any questions for Jose or anyone in this call, please feel free to drop them in the comments or in Slack or in the RSK research forum as well. We will check your questions and we will respond to them. All right. Now, let's talk about RSKIP 358. So this is the umbrella RSKIP, which basically contains the two RSKIPs that constitute the change, which Jose described in general, and you will hear more about in detail from Marcos just right after this. So what's happening here? So this set of changes, right? There's two changes which you'll hear about from Marcos. They have already happened in testnet, if you will, and there is a release that you can try out for 4.0.1, and that has already been activated in testnet, right? What's going to happen soon is that there's going to be a mainnet block activation for this change when it gets merged and updated in the node. So you can check out all of the details for this in the milestone, which is linked over here, and also the release candidate, which is also linked over here. We'll provide all of the links after this call. So what is actually inside of this version? And that is basically the next two RSKIPs that you'll hear about. So nice, short, and sweet. And Marcos will come in with all the details. Over to you.
Hello, everybody. Okay, so RSKIP 353. This is the most important one. What we propose here is to change the existing format of the Federation redeem script into a new format that it complies with Bitcoin standard rules. So if you can go to the next slide, Brendan. Thank you. So on the left, we have the current redeem script. This was included in RSKIP 201 when we added the emergency multisig. And on the right side, we have like the new proposal to be considered standard by Bitcoin. What you can see that the main difference here is that the one on the left has only one object multisig opcode at the end. Also, after it executes the whole script, it checks the multisig. But this is considered non-standard by Bitcoin rules. It's considering that the op and if should be the amount of signatures that it needs to validate. So that generates some confusion in the scripts. Well, it makes Bitcoin consider the script as a non-standard. So the solution is to have the op check multisig right after the op n, which is the total amount of signatures that each of the multisigs has. So that's the change. Just instead of having one check multisig opcode, we have two, one for each of the multisigs, the standard and the emergency one. One important thing to clarify here is that after this network upgrade activation, there is no change effective immediately. This will only change once we do a federation change. The new federation will have the new redeem script format. But until that happens, we still have like the old federation with the old format that is actually currently being considered non-standard. Okay. So that's it for this one. We can move on to the next RSKIP. And RSKIP 357, in this case, what we proposed was to increase the migration age. Once a federation change has been made, there is a period of time set in blocks where funds are migrated from the old federation into the new one. This is to ensure that all funds are safely migrated. Also, if any user does a peg-in for a certain period of time and accidentally sends funds to the retiring federation, those funds will also be migrated. And the change outputs received from existing payouts that the federation will receive that change to the old retiring federation that will also be migrating to a new one. So we can move to the next slide. Typically, this period is around 3 days and a half, I believe. That's 10,500 blocks. Now, since there's some uncertainty on how this migration will happen now, because the migration transactions that will be created will be considered non-standard by the Bitcoin network. So we will go into more detail about that later, but we will basically need miners to mine these particular transactions that are considered non-standard. So in order to make sure we have enough time to take care of everything safely and make sure we can mine these transactions and whatever else needs to be done, we will increase this migration age to 172,000 blocks. It's approximately 2 months. That should give us enough time to make sure that the migration is done safely. Well, this is like a one-time change. So the idea is that after we have solved this issue and in the upcoming network upgrade, we will go back to the original value of 10,000 blocks and keep things as they were working. That's it.
All right, and now over to Adrian for the next steps.
Thanks, Brendan. Thanks, guys, for explaining the scope for the patch. Wanted to give a summary of what are the next steps until the payout issue is finally fixed. Basically, this is a three-step process. There are mainly three things that need to happen in order to have the RSK network resume its payout operations. The first one is to release patch RSK versions, including these two consensus changes that Marcos has just explained. These fixes are ready. I mean, the versions are ready to be shipped. Actually, these, as Brendan was explaining before, these two changes have already been released and activated on RSK testnet. That was a very important step for us to validate that everything is working as expected. And so, as I said, first step of the process, or first next step of the process, is to release this patch network upgrade version of RSKJ. We have decided to release two patch versions actually, which are 401 and 411. Basically, this is a kind of a conservative approach so it's not mandatory for users running 400 to move to 4.1 version of the node. So basically, it's recommended, although it's not mandatory for users that are running 400 to upgrade to 401 and users running 410 to upgrade to 411. Basically, patch versions for the last two versions of RSKJ. And actually, this is a similar approach to the one we did on RSK testnet, and it proved to work well. This release of patch versions for mainnets, it's expected to happen next Monday on December 26th. And that's the date that we expect these versions to be released, so everyone can start upgrading to this patch version. However, and similar to what happens with every network upgrade, the activation of the patch will happen at a predefined block number. And we are proposing block number 4,976,300, which is expected to happen, to be mined around mid-January, January 17th, to be more precise, at least according to the current conditions of the network. So that gives the whole community and critical node operators that adhere to these changes to upgrade to these new client versions in like 3 weeks, starting from the moment that 3 and or a bit more, starting from the date that these releases become available to the general public. We are reaching out to all partners to validate that this is enough time for them to update. I believe we will not see any problem with that, but there is a slight possibility that this block number might change. However, this is what we are proposing. So we will, of course, confirm and communicate that when defined, of course, before this is shipped next Monday. Once the activation happens in that block number, Marcos has just explained it. There is a final step required to complete the process, which is the activation of the new redeem script, which is the one that makes the payout transactions standard, right? So as Marcos has just explained, for the new script to become active, it is required for the POPEC to be migrated from the current POPEC Bitcoin address to the new one. And for that migration to complete, we need the support of one or at least one Bitcoin mining pool to process those migration transactions, which are now non-standard until the new script kicks in. But since that happens afterwards, there is a set of transactions, a small set of transactions that will remain non-standard. So that's where we are in conversations with mining pools, with Bitcoin mining pools to support us, to support the RSK community in processing those transactions. And that's the last step of the process for everything to go back to normal. This step is definitely the most challenging one, but we are confident that we will have the support from the Bitcoin mining community confirmed soon. There is no defined date for this. We know that it will happen after activation in mid-January, but not defined date yet. Of course, the sooner the better. The last thing to mention about the steps, actually not about the steps, but I think Jose mentioned that before. It is very important that the users do not try to convert RBTC to BTC through the native POPEC until this is completely fixed. Not because the funds are at risk, but it will take longer for them to get their Bitcoins back until these transactions are processed. So it's a good idea not to use the native POPEC, but try instead to use some of the alternatives that are listed there in the incident report link that Jose just shared. So of course, we will keep the community updated on the progress and expect to see this fixed as soon as possible. Back to you, Brendan.
All right. Yeah, certainly learned a lot today. Especially, I think the biggest takeaway was the difference between a valid Bitcoin script and a standard Bitcoin script.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It has been a learning experience for us, and we have already adjusted all our testing procedures within the RSK core development team, so to improve how we test these kind of things that are quite sensitive. Unfortunately, this has taken some time to be fixed. We are close, but still some more work to do. And but it's annoying. We know it's annoying. The good thing is that the funds are not at risk, and everything will get back to normal hopefully soon. Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing, I guess, maybe a little bit less important, but there are two releases, which you can see in the first bullet point here. So the same patch is being applied to 4.0.0, as well as 4.1.0. So that's why you get the extra .1 releases for each of them. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's totally valid for a node operator running 4.0 to upgrade to 4.1.1. But
and we'd encourage that, I assume.
I mean, it's since this is for those that adhere to the changes, this is a mandatory upgrade. We don't want to force anyone to upgrade to 4.1 in order to basically remain in this to basically to update their nodes. So we are releasing both. It's totally fine to update to any of these versions of the node.
Yeah, that's right. All right, let's move on, I guess, to figure root.
Yeah, like a
take this.
very quick mention here, although not the main focus now, because we are like very focused on solving this issue, as explained before. However, the team or part of the team is already working on some of the proposed changes or consensus changes for the following network upgrade, which we are giving the code name Fingerroot. Still early in the process. There are already a couple of proposals as listed there in the slide. Everything focused on improving and making the POPEC more robust, or almost everything. But of course, this is open for discussion, for proposals. So I guess the important message now is that anyone in the community willing to propose a consensus change for Fingerroot, we are starting to work on this and have those conversations. So I don't know, maybe Brendan, you can give better information than me about how to basically be part of the process and the conversation.
Yeah. We certainly have a bunch of slides at the end to talk about that. But yes, essentially what we've talked about up until this point in the community call has all been within HOP. So these are changes within HOP, but Fingerroot is the next big thing, essentially. And that's why we're opening it up to the community input phase. So I just want to stress that these two RSKIPs that you see on the screen, they are so far the proposed ones, but we anticipate many more. I think, Jose, you suggested that we should include a couple more, right? Is that right?
Yeah, there are a couple of improvements for the RSK core node, like parallel transaction execution, storage rent. There are many big features that may be coming along Fingerroot. But then again, I think it's now time for the community to engage and to also put your vote, if you want better features to be included.
Yeah. So, and speaking of which, let's we'll talk about how you can do that, how you can give us your input as part of the Rootstock community. So, firstly, let's talk about the RSKIP process. If you go back to the very first RSK community call, which is now the Rootstock community call, Sergio, who is not on the stage today, he gave an in-depth rundown on the entire process. It is written up in RSKIP 0, the very first one. But I think it might be easier than if you prefer to video or audio format. It might be easier if you watch the very first Rootstock community call, which is obviously available on YouTube, just like this one will be right after this call. Same URL as the live stream, basically. So what can you do? Essentially, you can suggest new RSKIPs of your own creativity and your own ideas. You can also see existing RSKIPs that have been proposed already, and you can critique it, you can give suggestions, etc. Right? Where this happens is in the RSKIP GitHub repo, as well as on research.rsk.dev. So if you prefer the pull request, that kind of format on GitHub, that's for you. And there's also like a forum, discourse forum format, which is on research.rsk.dev. So those are the two main ways to participate in the RSKIP process. And of course, you can chat to us on the community Slack as well, which is primarily on the research and innovation channel within that. So if you go to rsk.code/Slack, you can open that up, as mentioned earlier on, and go to the research and innovation channel. All right, and this is all the information about where you can join us all on one page. So essentially, what do you want us to discuss in the next community call, and what can you contribute? If you contribute an RSKIP, we'll welcome you to the stage, and you can discuss it and present the idea to all Rootstockers, the entire Rootstock community, and we're very happy for you to do that. So it's an open invitation. All right, and that's it for today, and we'll wrap up. So thank you very much to Jose, Marcos, Adrian, for your time today and all the interesting insights. If we have a bunch of questions that we haven't answered yet, please drop them into Slack and etc., and we will be sure to answer them. All right, that's it for today.
Thanks, Brendan. Thanks, everyone.
You all.
See you next time.
Bye bye.
All right.
Happy New Year. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Happy holidays, everyone. Ciao. Bye.